It's under agenda. We've already got state bid pricing on the Onyx and also the Rejuvenator. We're looking at $36,578.88 for the Onyx and $35,521. Projected cost for the mill and grind right now is under $100,000, so we'll be under that $200,000. My goal was that we would save nickels and dimes and then even get that down a little bit more. But the whole object was to try to do 24 streets this year.
The next section, I just want to mention police levy, page 7. Now, we actually used to buy a new cruiser every year. The cruisers cost a little bit more than our levy generated. So we've been buying one every other year. We've got $38,000 in there earmarked for purchasing a cruiser. We've got the police department's buying some new vests. They bought half of them last year, and they're buying the rest of them this year. That's $13,000. Under the waste collection removal fund, we put $65,000 in there to buy a new dump truck, or a new pickup truck. I think that number's a little bit high.
It is a little bit high. We got a better price on it, state bid again. Looks like we can do the whole thing for right around $54,000. That's with the snow plow on it. It's a one-ton truck. So what's happened is the old Ford has cost the city, since I've been here in the bureau before that, and then last year, 2 years, he spent $10,000 on that truck. And it's falling apart. So this would replace that and quite frankly be a better improvement. They use the smaller trucks in the cul-de-sacs. So that's where that comes from.
At the bottom of page 7, we've got Blue Ridge Road Improvement Fund. We've got $100,000 coming back, one of the grants that we've got, with reimbursable grant. We can spend the money, and then we apply for a refund, or we use the money back. And I guess the rest of that, whatever work we'll do, will come out of the grant fund. And those are all the major things I want to just point out. Any questions?
I have a question about page 2. I'm just wondering if the elections appropriation for 2018 is $3,000. I was just wondering, is that supposed to be?
We get hit pretty good about every other year.
Okay.
And so I just put that in there. I have no idea if that's going to be the amount or not, but it should be close.
Okay.
If nobody else has any questions, I want to do just a quick overview from my perspective on the city budget. Anybody else have any other questions they want to ask John specific on that? I met with John the other night, and I appreciate that, John. John does a heck of a job with our city's budget and always has. I've always said if John and his assistant auditor wasn't here, I'm not sure what kind of financial situation we'd be. So John's done a good job of keeping a lid on a lot of the finances for the city, and I've always appreciated that. I tell John that whenever, every chance I get. But one thing I wanted to, I'm a numbers guy. I crunch numbers. I enjoy numbers. It's nothing sophisticated that I do, and it's not spreadsheet analysis. It's just a little old pocket calculator and so on. But to help me to understand the city's budget, if, on the income section that you have right there, on page 1, it's page 1 of 3 of the income. And this is how I always go about looking at our city's finances on there. And I'm always concerned about the two major items on there. The general property tax, $1,030,000, and the earnings tax, $1,160,000. That's about it's $2,190,000 of revenue that we generate each year. So I've always said, if everybody's ever heard me before, we're a $2 million city. There are other items underneath there, the local government fund. We used to have that estate tax. Remember, John, we used to get those little windfall checks on there? Mayor's court, vending permits, community center, different things in there. That's about another $300,000. But the base of our city is built on the property tax bringing in $1 million and the earnings tax bringing in $1 million or a little bit more than $1 million. So we're a $2 million city, but if you go down to the 2/3 of the way down on this income projections on there, total general fund, it's projected out $2,494,025. And if you look all the way back to 2013 and then project all the way forward, John does a good job of, it's very consistent what he does on these spreadsheets. So if there's any wild fluctuations or variations, they would stand out. But we're pretty consistent on the revenues and everything that we take in. Everything below that $2.4 million is money that's already earmarked for streets, roads, police levies, that type of a thing. So I don't ever put that in my analysis when I'm looking at it. I'm looking at this from a business perspective. We take in $2 million revenue, all right, $2.4 million revenue. What are we going to use? And that's general operating fund. So out of that $2.4 million comes our expenses. And that would be, if you pull out on the next, there's 9 pages for the expenditure projections. So on page 5, if you go right down to the bottom of page 5, it has the total general fund. And I'm not bringing this up to make a dig of anybody on that. That's, the total general fund is $2.6 million. So I always look at what are the revenues. If this was a business, now we're a municipality, it's a government, but if from a business perspective, or our households, you take in X amount of dollars, and you can only afford to spend what you take in. Otherwise, you have to borrow it, or rob Peter to pay Paul, and so on. So we basically take in $2.4 million, and we spend $2.6 million. Now we make up this difference by taking money out of the so-called rainy day fund, or our cash reserves. Or again, at the end of the year, things balance out. I think John, you mentioned the other day we got
last year we were $80,000 ahead.
So we came ahead on that, and that's good.
Even with the reduction in the earnings tax.
Right, which is good. We want that. So, and I guess in one sense, from a municipality, we're always going to spend whatever money we take in. You're not going to go too much into a deficit on
Well,
that.
as you know, Shawn, I kind of usually estimate the income low and the expenses high.
Right. Yes.
And it's worked well for 30 years.
And it does. And that's why I always go back and I look at his actual. I look at what his actual is, look at what his budget is, and then the following year look at it. And John, it's a work of art. You do a good job with it. I appreciate
I
it.
think these numbers look really good, but I don't think that's what we're.
And that's right, because historically your numbers pan out. What you wind up saying is so. This is not. I'm not beating up John with what he's doing or what we're doing as a city and all that. But we only take in so much money, and we only got so much money in reserve. Now, when I was on council last time, we had about $1.5 million in the bank, and it fluctuates a little bit, but that rainy day fund is lower. And things can happen, and if BJ sets us on this course for growing our city, who knows what other unintended expenses may crop up and hurt us. So I'm always looking at how can we raise revenue and how can we cut expenses. That's always good accounting 101. Every firm out there, you're always looking, how do we raise revenue and how do we cut expenses? One interesting, 2 little points that I want to make on there. Our city, and I don't know whether these numbers are good or bad. I have no idea. I plan on checking either with the Ohio Municipal League or Center for Local Government and get numbers from other communities and find out what averages are percentage-wise, what people spend for different expenses and so on. But what I'm getting at on that point is our salaries for our city, on our $2.4 million coming in, we spend $1.5 million in salaries. And we're a bare bones community. But we're spending $1.5 million, out of $2.4 million. Good, bad, or I don't know. But just because when you look at these budget reports, it's hard to figure out what our wages are, what our wage costs are. I mean, in the business world, salaries are 15%. In a municipal, is it 40, 50%? Is it 60%?
About 75%.
What's that?
75%.
For what?
In a municipal government,
In a
salaries
municipal.
are generally 75%.
Okay, and that's what I'm on it.
Now, there's some go low, some go high.
Right. So so that's our, just just want to know what our benchmark figure is on that. So again, I'm always looking at general revenues in, general revenues out, because I always look at our community center. We always pay more in utility costs than we take in rent. I mean, my first thought is, okay, what do we, you know, we not charging enough? Are people not renting the community center enough? We should at least break even or even make a couple bucks on the community center. So I'll go through different things like that to kind of look and see what we can do on there. Because again, the roads and the streets and so on, I do like the fact that we're always getting in, you know, on the income side there, the gasoline tax and the motor vehicle fund, license tax fund, all that, you know, $6 million or $264,000 in it. You add that to the street levy that we got, $200,000 in there. Now we got money to fix the streets. It's taxes. Residents, you know, they speak up a lot about taxes out there. So on another point I just want to make, and John gave me this the other day, and I just want, because when I heard that the renewal levy was up last year on there, somebody says, well, that renewal levy, if we don't pass, that renewal levy is worth $700,000 in tax revenue. $700,000 on that 5-year, right, John? It's we have an operating levy. I thought when I was on council last time, I thought it was generating $300-some-odd-thousand. I must have looked at the figures backwards then. Our general real estate tax brings in $327,000. Because like, if you look at Silverton's numbers, Silverton brings in $500-some-odd-thousand in real estate tax. I'm like, why is there so much lower? Is it the properties and so on? Well, they don't have an operating fund on top of the real estate tax that we're giving our fund. So our real estate tax is $327,000. Our operating levy, which renews every 5 years, generates $700,000. What would have happened this last year if the residents said, I'm taxed enough already, I'm not voting for the operating level? That would take $700,000 out of our general fund.
Then we'd go like Silverton and not have a reciprocity in there.
Well, that's right. That's the next thing we have going forward. And again, I'm with you on the budget this year going forward. We've got a little extra cash. You know, we're getting money from different sources and so on. But we have to be, you know, conscious of that going forward. How is our city stacking up with other? How many have operating levies? And those are every 5 years we're renewing those. What if the residents at some point say, no, I don't want to do that, I'm taxed enough already? Do we look at the reciprocity tax on that? What do we do on that? Now my first meeting with BJ, right after I got elected up there, he wants to grow our economy in Deer Park. I mean, that changed my thinking altogether. Because I'm like, how are we going to, you know, we haven't grown in 40 some odd years, how are we going to do that then there? But it puts on a different thinking cap then instead of cut, because we don't have anything to cut. We are bare bones. We've always been bare bones, but then again, we look like we're bare bones. That's another story on there. But if BJ's coming in from the mindset, how can we grow our city? I mean, he threw me for a loop on that. For a whole weekend, I was like, what the hell are we talking about here? Growing the city. We've got the comprehensive plan. The previous councils have done a lot of work, put, you know, CRAs and the CIC, put all that stuff in place in there. We got the foundation to do that. So I'm hoping BJ can grow our tax base out there. I don't know how long that would take to do that. You know, it took Brookwood, how long did it take to redevelop Brookwood down there? You got one person holding on. So it can take some period of time to do that. So I want us as council going forward to constantly be more, John does a great job at it. He's in the administrative side. He's not here to tell us how to spend money and how to make money. He's there just to audit it, make sure everything's going properly, and give us the good numbers to do it. We, as the council members, are the ones that guide and direct how we want the administration to go out and do these things in there. We want to be able to empower BJ to do more. Find more money, find more resources to do these things. So that's kind of my, you know, spiel on that. And I'll always hammer home. I mean, I don't like taxes no more than the next person on there. You hear it all the time from our residents. Our taxes percentage-wise are higher than ever surrounding community. But what else are we going to do? I would have put the street tax on there too. Luckily, that money's going straight into the roads on there. BJ's going to be able to do a bang up. He's coming in under bids on those things there. It's going to help us out. But what else can we do to grow Silverton? If anybody's gone on to the, and I'll shut up in a moment, going on to Silverton's website, the mayor did a wonderful recap of their city last year. I mean, they're growing. And they put the facts and figures on paper. When I read that last week, I'm like, so we need to capitalize on what they're doing down there, start getting this redevelopment going here, and BJ's on the right track with that, bringing the lawyers in with the TIFs and getting the West Road going on. I don't know how long it's going to take to start growing the revenues on there, maybe a couple of years or longer. But we have to be fully aware. When I was on council before, the Obamacare came into place and John had health care going up to $700,000 a year. Luckily, it didn't happen. I mean, it stuck around, what, 400 some odd thousand dollars. But who knows, any one little hiccup can hurt Deer Park. Another bad recession, another downturn in something, tax law changes or whatever, the state wanted to take over the, municipal income tax, and those are all things that so we've got to look for ways of raising our revenues and cutting our costs. Thank you.
Can I follow up on something there, Shawn?
Yeah.
One of the questions you mentioned was the tax dollars for the roads. And I don't know if you weren't here for it, actually, I think a number of you weren't here for it at the time. One of my first pitches on council was when they brought in a $1 bill and said, this is how much we have for putting in roads. But we could leverage this $1 to get a $10 bill through grants and leveraging it, which we can actually then use as our 10% match to go to a $100 bill to really start doing our roads and doing our improvements. And that's why I appreciate everybody kind of going $2,500 for the covers grants. Got it, okay. Because we've been pretty good and pretty successful at having 3-to-1, 4-to-1, up to 5-to-1 matches with grant money. And ideally even doing more than that when we get, not that we want to broadcast it outside of here too much, but Blue Ash Road, $6 million, not our money. That's fantastic. Again, Valley did that here, but we don't really tell everybody else that because they want them doing the same thing we're doing because it's money that we want to make sure we're bringing back to Deer Park. And I think there's some more options like that as you're out and in your different expertise and fields, looking for those grant opportunities, listening for them, hearing them out there, whether it's state, federal, or private funds that are out there, and there's grant opportunities out there. The more we can pull those in, we can really leverage those tax dollars so that we get, $200,000 in for road money. Representative Deaver was over at the community center when we were talking about the road funds coming in, and he referenced, love to see you be able to multiply that 10 times, not just 5 times. And that's where he can help from a state level, and we've got advocates that are willing to help us, but it takes making sure our numbers are in place, and appreciate, as you said, I'll echo, BJ, thank you for your diligence on this as well, in bringing things in under budget and figuring out different ways to tighten the budget, and John as well. You've always done a great job on this, and we just rely on it. We take it for granted, so, and thank you for pointing that out, Shawn, but that is, I think something that we need to make sure we're focused on is looking at how can we really leverage what we have here to make it to the next level, because that's how we're going to be able to do that.
Any other questions? The only other thing I want to mention, I'm going to transfer all these numbers over to a resolution, so we'll have that prepared for the next meeting, and we want to do 3 readings. So the 2 meetings in March and the first meeting in April, or in February, and the first meeting in March.
Yeah, ordinance.
Just like
That's got to be into state law,
in the March.
And this one doesn't require a public hearing anyway, right? When do you do that? Was that for the
It's in July for the budget.
for the budget for the?
For next year.
Right. Well, we always do this on rereadings.
Yes.
Yeah, you have to on that one. You can't waive.
Your next item on the agenda was asked to be put under the handy, rules of council.
It was something we could discuss, I think, at the first committee meeting, maybe. I've been looking at some other statutory cities. I know the issue with committees and rules and certain things that were not in our big, huge code book. So Reading is pretty straightforward and clean cut looking text. So I could potentially just take that and adapt it into something that reflects what we do here in Deer Park. We had already done a thing recently where we added that 3rd committee meeting into our ordinances. So if council would like me to, I can try to restructure these a little bit, put them in our code book so that future councils and stuff will have them in front of them, so they'll know exaggeration about how everything works sometimes, so, just something, if people would like me to put something together, I can send it out. If you don't like it, tell me whatever tweaks you want, we can just put it in our code book.
Andy, I like that, yeah, I mean, they got quite a few pages on there, because it goes into a lot of things. I'm happy if we just do, on the first page there, the standing committees, this is again Reading's thing, 21.04 standing committees. Just even that brief paragraph there, and if we just keep the same 3 committees that we have, that works fine for that, and maybe the paragraphs on it. And then the next section is not committee of council, the 214.05, the committees of council. Those 2 things there would add a lot just to our council rules. The other ones would need a lot of possible debate and discussion, and that, make it pretty complicated, sophisticated at that point on there, but I think.
Are you saying that this is the 4th Tuesday of each month, so I'm assuming we would be a Monday?
No, I'm skipping that. No, that 2010, 210.05. That committee. I'm not talking about expanding any more council ones.
Okay.
Just the 210.04 and then the 210 or 214.05. Those 2 sections would support our council committees in our council rules of the Deer Park.
I looked at some length before that because of the way we did the committees, and there was absolutely nothing in writing how they did. We had always done it by the mayor. The mayor had always made the appointments, and so that's what we stuck with.
Right. Yeah. But it's all I go by Ohio Rights. As long as we're a statutory city, we got to go by ORC. If we want to ultimately get to a charter, then that's a whole other.
We couldn't find anything in the ORC either. But then I'm not a lawyer, and I'm
You don't
not
have
sure.
to have committees, but we.
Yeah, we don't even have to have that.
So if we're gonna use them, let's just put them in our
Yeah.
book, so.
I mean, what's interesting is Reading's is more complicated than Sharonville's.
Yes, it is.
And you would
It
think
should be
it,
at a pretty, even more convoluted, so I just want to keep it real simple.
yeah, that's why I like just those 2 sections in Reading. I mean, if you want to add more to it and bring that up, that'd be, I'm perfectly fine with that too, but we don't need to make it overly complicated, but we just have to have something in the council rules.
I like section 214.10, rules for conducting discussion. No member shall be permitted to speak more than once on any subject until every member choosing to speak shall have had an opportunity to be heard. No member of council shall be heard more than twice on any subject, nor for longer than 5 minutes.
We have, the end of this month, the second meeting this month, we have a gentleman coming in to discuss Robert's Rules of Order for us, because we have an ordinance in there somewhere that says that's how we run this meeting, and I think that can be clarified at that point.
And I would rather follow Robert's Rules of Order, which even in Robert's Rules of Order say that if it's becoming an obstacle to the process, that it should be suspended.
Yes.
Because discussion and council coming to a consensus is more important than even Robert's Rules of Order
Yes.
itself. So,
Okay.
not necessarily, without casting aspersions, I think Reading's had a few more conflicts over the years.
Yes, they have.
Where this has kind of evolved out of, and I would hope we would not go here, so.
Is that still, we still set for that the end of this month? Okay.
The next item on the vacant bill, I'd like to table that right now. Council has to look at that again and see how we're going to go forward.
Table until, the next meeting.
I think what you're going to have is an ordinance prepared so you can have discussion.
Well, I mean, I just need to make an ordinance that would implement this into our code book. We have a thing that's been circulated around, the vacant building ordinance. I just need to make an authorizing ordinance if they want to vote on it. I think the issues we had are still kind of floating. I just was waiting for some guidance if those fine amounts looked okay, or if you wanted me to leave those dollar amounts the same.
Well, if we're talking about the ordinance that was floated around last October, November, I mean, that also references the International Property Maintenance Code and a variety of other aspects, which it also declares how the building can become declared vacant.
Right.
And you can declare something vacant for as there's a lot of if any occurs, if this ever occurs. And when you have situations like that, we need to think about not necessarily the municipality acting in its good faith, but also acting in bad faith and putting restrictions in place as well. And when you have, if there are any of these type of violations, I'm going through, that is a very low threshold for a municipal inspector to come out and declare somebody's property, this should be vacated and declared a vacant property. That's a threshold that in the ordinance itself, I think needs to be clarified and cleaned up, because I don't think we want that to be
Let me
occurring.
expand upon that. You're right, Mr. Castle, up until Friday, when I was made aware of the new changes in the Ohio Building Code and Fire Code, and now that whole code section in the Ohio Building Code now expands into the nuisances of those properties and gives the code official and the fire chief official to basically shut those buildings down and declare it a nuisance.
For a fire code?
For fire code, no.
I understand for fire code.
No, you
This
understand.
reference is actually International Property Maintenance Code, and it actually refers to the Deer Park Code, which refers to IPC, which the latest IPC, if a window seal has not been maintained, you can therefore, and it doesn't necessarily need to be leaking, if it's not maintained, it could therefore be declared vacant based on this.
I understand that comment, but when I'm looking at it in a Ohio building code, okay, and you're looking at maintenance code on the IBC, okay? Now, first of all, when was the last time we approved the maintenance code here?
It's actually automatically referred to the latest IPC.
Okay. Then I would suggest that we would look at that again and put the constraints in there. Because under the building code now, a good example is the bowling alley. Technically, the city could declare the nuisance right now, have the electric turned off, and issue a condemning order. Well, here's what happens. If the city does that,
It's a downward spiral.
yeah, exactly. And what happens next is then, say we order it tore down, and they say, we're not gonna tear it down, you tear it down. Then the city bears responsibility to clean up if there's asbestos and all that. So I was looking at a way to put teeth in this thing so that we don't have to turn around and incur any nuisances, that they create their own nuisance and they pay the price for that.
And to that extent, I agree. And I agree in having a vacant building code, whether it's vacant building code maintenance license, similar to something like Cincinnati has, but not what's been put before us, because to me, this makes it so that you can declare buildings vacant, that functionally are optional or are occupied and lived in, and that's not what our intent
Well,
was.
why don't we help this conversation for everyone? I will scan Cincinnati's ordinances out and send it to you, Andy, Cincinnati's code. Give it to everybody to look at as a model and see where you want to go. Because you're going to have to make, whatever you do as a council, I'm looking at, I'm a tightwad. You don't need to incur legal expense. But the biggest thing is when you got somebody taking advantage of you, the problem is the residents in this town are tired of seeing that kind of stuff go on. And a case in point is a guy that buys a building. I'm dealing with the property on Redmont, where the city, in good faith, did a CRA there, a CIC, and all that stuff, and he's still procrastinating. So I said, I want a timeline out of you. I have no real authority to do that, but I'm pushing in a way that maybe he understands we're not being tolerant of his promise. So that's where I'm
And that Cincinnati vacant building maintenance license gives you very specific timelines that he has to comply with.
Okay.
I think
I'll
that's-
circulate that in the morning.
Well,
Thank you.
my problem with it is that when somebody does take over a vacant building, that I don't think they should have to pay like $900 if they immediately start to take it over and make it, try to make it habitable, and if they take care of the grounds immediately and make it
Well, I don't think
secure.
you'd be opposing the final that they're redoing the building, where it goes to the place that this building's standing there.
Right,
basic
but the way that it's written, it doesn't say there is an
There's a
exemption.
provision for a 2-year waiver of the license fee. So I think if you get people to flip the properties, if they can get it done within 2 years, that's what I
Oh,
was.
it does say there's a 2-year
Under
waiver?
130207, there's a provision in there where it talks about they could,
Okay.
I assume that it would apply to that situation, but we could certainly hold off.
And the
And then-
cities, and Cincinnati's actually does have it's economic development waiver, so that if a property has developed, and if you go to Over the Rhine and look at some of the properties that have sat there vacant for 30 years, and literally have fines and fees racking up far more than the property or the value of the land is worth, the city can actually waive that for the new purchaser to come in to develop that property and go forward.
And I wouldn't even give them 2 years, though. I think that there should be on, as he said, a short timeline, so they can't buy it and let it continue to sit there either.
So this is the kind of thing that if it is urgent like that we're gonna tweak.
Right.
Yeah.
I was asked to put the next item on, medical marijuana dispensaries. I think really that should be going to planning and zoning for determination on that, to come back to council. So that might be premature on my part.
I think it's one thing we could potentially do a moratorium is to hold off on the applications until we get direction from them. I found out a little bit more. I just sent something out today. It sounds like there's really, it looks like they're only going to put 3 of these in Hamilton County. I don't know if Charles looked into that at all, but there's like these districts throughout the state, and so I looked up the list of the applications. I didn't see any applications that had Deer Park address. There's like 17 applications for permits. I think they're all competing for these 3 dispensaries in Hamilton County, so we might be making them out of Little Hill, but it seems like something we should still have something to address.
I think if council is up for it, putting a moratorium in place until P and Z can get back to us, I think makes good sense. And for that matter, if P and Z can also look into, if council's supportive, I'll call it additional aspects of the medical, call it drug use, and we'll just broaden it from marijuana to drug use, whether it's a methadone clinic or the Suboxones or the Vivitrol. Some of those you want as dispensaries, other ones you do not want as dispensaries. And what I mean by that is, functionally, we have a pharmacy in Walgreens. That's technically a dispensary of drugs. So we need to be careful with our zoning that we don't end up banning a building that's already here doing good work by lumping it into something else. So asking P and Z to look through, based on the issues we're dealing with now, to look through our current zoning planning laws.
Andy, do you have to draft up a more?
I can get something ready by next week. I'm not opposed to it.
Thank you. The next one I want to bring to your attention, and this was brought to my attention by Ms. Culver, and it's a great program, something positive for the city. It doesn't cost us anything. It's called Simple Recycling. I met with the person. They do this in Montgomery, so it's articles of clothing